Hey folks, welcome to Phantoms and Monsters Radio. Now, there is a moment in certain encounters that never leaves a person. It's not the scream, and it's not the movement. It's not even the fear. It's the realization. A moment when the woods are the same as they were a second ago. The air is still. The light has not changed, and yet something deep inside you suddenly knows that you're not alone. Not because something moved, but because something has been there all along. Now, the witnesses in tonight's episode all describe that movement. They did not stumble into danger, and they did not walk into something unexpected. They realized slowly and horribly that they were already being watched. Now, this first case, the witness states, when I was a little boy, my family lived in a small 2-bedroom house. One night, my brother and I stood at the front window watching the rain fall. Lightning flashed across the sky and the thunder rolled in the distance, but somehow everything else felt unnaturally quiet. There was only one tree in our front yard. It was a horrible looking thing, dead, twisted. It never had leaves. That night the wind whipped its black branches violently as if the tree itself were angry at the storm. We stood there in silence, listening to the rain tap against the glass, when suddenly a huge bolt of lightning lit up the entire yard. In the branches of that tree, staring directly at us, was something I had never seen before. In that instant, I knew 5 things all at once. It was solid. It was standing on 2 feet. It was standing on one specific branch. It knew we were there, and my brother was seeing it as well. But somehow we were not seeing the same thing. To me, the creature looked like a grotesque cartoon farmer. Its body was flattened and distorted. It wore what looked like a flannel shirt and overalls. A wide, unnatural grin splits its face from side to side. In its right hand, it held a metal pitchfork. But at the same time, I realized my brother was seeing something else. Years later, he told me that he saw a skeleton in that same spot. Thick bones, hollow eye sockets, standing in the same branches where I saw the farmer. The lightning flickered again, and then it went dark. When our eyes adjusted to the dim glow of the storm clouds, the branches were empty. Whatever had been there was gone. Neither of us screamed and neither of us cried. There was only the pounding in my ears as I slowly turned my head and looked at my brother. In his eyes, I could see that he had experienced the same shock. He did not have to speak. Years later, my father cut that tree down. We never told him why. Reports of entities appearing differently to multiple witnesses are not rare. Now, in folklore, paranormal research, and even modern UFO cases, witnesses standing side by side often describe completely different forms. This suggests not a simple hallucination, but something capable of being perceived in more than one way at the same time. Now, this next witness states, in June of 1995, I lived on a large property near Spokane, Washington. One afternoon, I was mowing the front lawn, which was scattered with old apple trees. Now, on my first pass, I felt something strange near one of the trees, a sensation I couldn't explain. Now, on the second pass, I felt it again. And on the third, it became undeniable. I was being watched. I kept looking around, scanning the lawn and the trees, but I could not see anything. By the fourth pass, I was frustrated and uneasy. When I reached the corner of the tree again, the feeling was stronger than ever. I looked up the branches. That's when I saw it. About 8 foot up in the tree was a small being with dark almond-shaped eyes and thin limbs. Its body was almost translucent. Its outline wavered and shifted like heat rising from pavement. At times it was barely visible at all. It was just sitting there, watching me. Fear hit me so hard I nearly lost my balance. I left the lawn unfinished and went inside without telling anyone. I knew how it would sound. Then 3 nights later at around 12:30 in the morning, I was reading in bed when my whole body began tingling. It was an intense electric sensation that made me sit up. I walked to the window and looked out over the field. About 200 yards away, hovering just above the ground, was a dimly glowing oval-shaped craft. I could see lights blinking underneath it. Through large windows, I could see movements inside. I tried to wake my girlfriend, but she wouldn't stir. Then I felt pressure building in my ears, and the craft vanished in an instant. I have always believed that the being in the tree was waiting for it. Now, in both these cases, the witnesses sensed its presence before they ever saw it. A quiet awareness that something was already there, hidden just out of view. But for others, the moment of discovery was far more sudden. Next witness states, in the early 1990s, I lived in a small town in Tennessee called Antioch. One afternoon around 3 o'clock, I was outside with my dog when I felt something watching me. It was the same feeling, pressure, a presence. I looked towards the woods. At first, I could not see anything, but I could hear leaves rustling. Then I started looking higher toward the top of the trees. That's when I saw it. There was something crouched up there, sitting in the branches. It was the size of a man, but the branches should never have been able to hold or support its weight. Its outline was visible, but I could see through it, like a shimmering distortion in the air. It looked exactly like the cloaked creature from the Predator movies, even though I had not seen those films yet. Without thinking, I dropped the leash and ran toward it, yelling. It took off across the tops of the trees. It moved impossibly fast. Then it stopped about 50 yards away, turned, and looked at me. We stared at each other. Then it vanished into the woods. I never told anyone. This next witness states, I was biking home one late night in Anoka County, Minnesota. Most of the route was dark forested trail with almost no streetlights. I had just reached the area where the lights ended and the woods began, so I turned on my phone's flashlight. A few seconds later, I tilted it upwards and froze. For just a brief moment, I saw a tall, thin, skinny, pale figure standing in front of me. It was upright like a man. Then it dropped on all fours and vanished into the woods. I pedaled as fast as I could. I could hear it running behind me, hidden in the trees, keeping pace. A low screech followed me through the darkness. Later, when I reached an open field, I smelled something strange, sweet, like fresh blueberry pancakes or waffles. There were no buildings nearby. It felt like something was trying to draw me off the trail. Now, before we talk about the following report, if you're enjoying tonight's presentation and want to hear more stories like this, please don't forget to hit the like button and subscribe to Phantoms and Monsters Radio. It really helps us reach more people who are searching for answers about the unexplained. And make sure to click the notification bell so that you won't miss any of our live shows. Now, this witness says, I live in a very rural part of northern New Jersey in Sussex County. Now, behind my property and to the left of my house is nothing but forest. There are a few narrow trails back there, but most of them are dense, untouched woods. Next door to us is a protected wilderness area where nothing can be built. Occasionally, I will take my young son out in his little wagon and have a small picnic in the clearing near the woods. We would sit a few feet from the tree line and just enjoy the quiet. One afternoon, he started doing what he always did, mimicking the sounds around us. He copied birds, squirrels, even the neighbor's dog. I turned my back for just a moment to get some fruit from our basket when I heard him say, "Mom, Mom." But he wasn't looking at me. He was staring up in a tree, pointing, not blinking. I turned and asked him what he saw, thinking it might be a bird. But then I noticed something else. There were no sounds, no birds, no insects, no wind. He began walking towards the woods, still pointing upward, still staring. The only movement I could see were leaves rustling in the branches. But that's when I saw it. In the tree was something that looked like heat rising off a pavement. A cloaked, crouched shape with one arm out and bent knees. It had the shape of a humanoid, but the posture reminded me of a praying mantis. I felt its gaze hit me like fire. Then I heard a clicking sound. The moment it In the moment it turned its attention from my son to me, my son suddenly snapped out of it and panicked. He mimicked the clicking sound it had made. I grabbed him and ran. Now, that was 6 months ago. Even now, when I lie in bed at night, I hear faint clicking sounds coming from the woods. I believe it's still there. Now, across dozens of cloaked humanoid encounters, witnesses describe clicking or ticking sounds that precede movement. Now, these sounds appear to be either a form of communication or a byproduct of whatever process allows the entity to remain visibly distorted. Now, the next witness states, one Saturday night near Ada, Oklahoma, my teenage daughter was bored. So I suggested we drive out of town and watch the sky. We parked near a hill and started looking for satellites. She suddenly asked me if they zigzag and move in circles. I said no. She was watching something moving erratically in the sky. I went to get my night vision goggles. While she lost interest, I scanned the tree line because I had done Bigfoot investigations, I know how to look for eye shine. But that's when I saw them. Eyes. I told her to look. She did, and immediately said she could see ears and that she was scared. At first, I thought Bigfoot. Then I saw them. Two tall, pointed ears like a German shepherd's, sticking up from the head of something standing in the trees about 30 yards away. I realized my infrared beam was shining directly into its face. Its eyes were squinted shut. When I lowered the beam, its eyes slowly opened. That moment froze me. I got back, terrified, and ran for the truck. The next witness says, my father grew up in rural Costa Rica, in a region filled with oil palm groves where you could go miles without seeing another house. One night, while delivering vegetables, he was stopped by a herd of goats blocking the road. Then he heard a voice behind him asking how much for lettuce. When he turned, he saw a man at least 10 feet tall. He was painfully thin, pale, and dressed in overalls, a flannel shirt, a bandana, and a straw hat. The hat shadowed his eyes. The man bought lettuce and walked away whistling. The goats followed him into the palm groves. Now, in Central American lore, beings known as El Dueño del Monte are said to appear as tall farmers who command animals and dwell in the palm forest. Their eyes are never seen. Now, this next woman states, one night in November 11, 2013, I was standing on my balcony in Queensland, Australia, sometime between 2:30 and 3 in the morning. I got out there most nights at that hour just to look at the stars before going to bed. It's quiet then, and you can see a surprisingly amount of the sky. That night, something caught my attention almost immediately. A few blocks away, there's a forestry-covered hill with phone towers at the top. The sides of the hill are thick with trees, and people do not normally go up there. I noticed a bright white pulsing glow inside the trees. Now, it was not blinding, but it was a light in a strange way, like daylight coming from within the forest itself. The light pulsed slowly, rhythmically. I watched it for several hours, trying to work out what it could have been. Then a glowing white ball slowly rose up out of the trees. It hovered about 10 meters above the treetops. The light it gave off illuminated the forest around it. But it didn't hurt my eyes. It felt controlled, not chaotic. Now, after maybe 10 seconds, the ball simply disappeared. It did not move away. It just switched off. I got into my car and drove around the block to where the forest begins. I parked and walked in, heading toward the area where I'd seen the light. The deeper I went, the quieter everything became. There were no insects, birds, or wind. Then another glowing ball appeared ahead of me. It was about 30 meters away when I began to see dark silhouettes moving around it. They were walking past the light, their forms blocking it. I tried to move closer, but suddenly I couldn't. My body simply would not respond. A calm, gentle voice behind me said, "Do not be afraid." The moment those words were spoken, I was able to move again, and I fell forward onto the ground. When I rolled over, a very tall man was standing over me. He had long white blonde hair and extremely pale skin. He was wearing what looked like a fluffy white one-piece suit, and he reminded me of the albino men from The Matrix. He reached down and helped me up. That's when I noticed something I'll never forget. On either side of his neck were long slits that opened and closed when he breathed. They looked like gills. He led me toward the glowing ball. Around it stood several small figures wearing black hooded robes. Each had a long rod like a staff. They never showed their faces. The tall man was calm but terrifying. He would paralyze me without touching me at all. I don't know what they were, but they were waiting. This next witness states, as teenagers, my friend and I went camping in the Annapolis Valley in Nova Scotia. We decided to sleep in an abandoned camper deep in the woods. It had been sitting there so long that trees had grown up around it. We arrived after dark, lost and tired. Inside, rats scurried in the ceiling. The wind made the camper creak and groan. We were already on edge. At some point in the night, I woke up and saw a man's silhouette staring in through the window in the far end of the camper. He was standing perfectly still, watching us. I woke my friend, and for 10 minutes we stared at that figure. He never looked away. When we shone a flashlight on it, we realized it was a mirror. But the fear was real. And for those 10 minutes, we were absolutely convinced something was out there. Now, the reason these stories stay with people is not because of what was seen, it's because of how it felt. Being watched is one of the most primal fears we have. It's older than language, older than memory. And it's the instinct that tells prey when a predator has locked onto them. That instinct does not need proof. The witnesses you have just heard from did not stumble into danger. They became aware of it. Something stood just beyond the edge of vision, behind the trees, inside shadows, beneath branches. Sometimes it reaches itself or reveals itself. Sometimes it stays hidden. But the awareness was always the same. They were being observed. Now, whether these things are ultra-terrestrial, interdimensional, or something far older that shares this world with us, the behavior is consistent. They do not rush, and they do not chase. They wait. And sometimes when the woods goes silent and the air grows heavy, they let you know that you have finally noticed them. That moment when the realization sets in is what changes people forever. Because once you know something is watching, you can never look at the trees the same way again. Now, if you've experienced anything like this or had an unexplained encounter or sighting, you can send your report to Phantoms and Monsters. And as always, thank you for listening. So let's start the questions, folks. Surfing scientist sailor. I live in a city. Are those sightings only in rural settings? Well, tonight stories are, but I hear a lot of weird stuff in urban areas. I mean, look at some of the sightings of the Mothman or the winged humanoids in the Chicago area, especially the ones in the city itself. Uh, Many of those people saw these beings in trees that were watching them. That's how they noticed them. They had that strange feeling that they were being watched. So that sensation just doesn't happen in the woods or the wilderness. It happens in all different places. Paranormalism Net. What is the relationship between cryptids and trees? Well, most cryptids are something other than humanoid. They're living out in an area, for the most part, that have a lot of trees, and that's what they use to hide in. So that's why a lot of them are seen in trees. But they're just something about trees. I mean, even when you're at a distance, you see something peeking out behind a tree at a distance in the edge of the forest, or you see something in the woods, just like the Glimmerman stories, where you get this glassine looking creature or humanoid that's up in the branches, many times seen by hunters that are up in the tree itself in a stand. It's just an area where these beings are familiar and probably feel safer. Bublietz 1254. Do you hear a lot of Wendigo skinwalker encounters in Minnesota? Not necessarily. I have heard a few. And I believe in the United States itself, probably most of the Wendigo sightings come from the upper Midwest, Minnesota, maybe the upper peninsula, Michigan, sometimes in Wisconsin. But yeah, I mean, the skinwalkers, of course, are mostly in the Southwest, so the skinwalkers probably wouldn't be something we hear a whole lot about in Minnesota. But occasionally, we get a few other odd-looking humanoid beings. But you know, I do get a lot of reports of Minnesota, but it's a lot of different things. And of course, we have winged humanoids sightings up there as well. Real Truth Ken, do you believe in the 100th monkey effect? I do. So, what's the 100th monkey effect? I probably heard of it before, but I just can't recall what that is. Maybe you can give me a little rundown of it. Maybe I equate to something else I'm familiar with. Grandizer. Lon, just curious if you have any thoughts or commentary on the life of Swiss author Eric von Däniken, who passed away earlier this week. His Chariots of the Gods, book is a popular book. You know, I will admit this. I that book probably got me interested in most of what I believe in now, or what I did believe in back then. I first became acquainted with the Chariot of the Gods in 1972, I think it was. It was my freshman year in high school. I had a British Earth and Space science teacher by the name of Mr. Robinson. And Mr. Robinson was quite an eccentric gentleman. But he introduced me to Eric von Däniken and Chariot of the Gods because he knew I was interested in, well, basically abductions and things that we couldn't explain, or how time in history may be affected by something other than evolution. And I probably read that book a dozen times. But I do blame that book for getting me interested in the paranormal. Even though I was intuitive, I had paranormal experiences. I didn't really know what I was doing or what I was sensing and such. But that book kind of opened my eyes. Now, there have been parts of that book over the years I've kind of been disproven. But von Däniken, he was a different type of individual, and very, very believable, very serious about what he did. And one of the few authors and investigators that I had a lot of respect for. Dagnammit. Do you have any stories about people among us that do not age? Offhand, I can't think of one. Yeah, I can't think of one offhand. I've heard a few, but there's just not enough evidence that I think that would prove that it does happen. There have been a lot of folklore and been a lot of stories about people who don't age. There's even a movie about someone who got younger as they got older. So I don't get many of them, and honestly, most of them are very short, and I usually just don't even fool with them. Karen Rastetter. Lon, have you seen the unexplained in the forest? Please share. The unexplained in the forest. I mean, are you talking about a specific title or a specific phenomena? I've seen a lot of things in the forest, and maybe a few of those I couldn't explain. But what I did see was very brief. Of course, I'm intuitive, and just like when I go to Gettysburg and I'm on the battlefield, especially when there's very few people around, I'll pick up some sense of something. I'll see something that kind of flickers in and flickers out. But yeah, I mean, I guess occasionally I will see something. It's just not necessarily in the forest. I see a lot of different things. Paranormalism Net. How common is for humanoid beings to wear black hooded robes? I do hear a lot of them. Now, is it for effect? Is it something these beings wear a lot? I have no idea, but I do get a fair amount of black robed beings, usually humanoid, and but there's no really rhyme or reason as to why they're wearing them. Maybe it's something they like to wear. Maybe it's something, if they're not from our world or an ultra-terrestrial some type, that's what they wear. But I really can't give you an idea why they do that. Sir Wolf, Lon, how regular are you getting Glimmerman reports? Are they ramping up? What do you think they are? Well, I think they're an ultra-terrestrial, first of all. And an ultra-terrestrial, for the most part, is something that does reside on the Earth occasionally or on our Earth plane, but for the most part, they're interdimensional. They're from another realm, maybe even a linear dimension to our Earth plane. That's what I believe the winged humanoids are. But they do seem to have the ability to move in and out without displacing any type of body mass or anything like that. I think they probably shapeshift to a degree to keep us from being fearful of them. They make themselves look more like us. But I think they are interdimensional beings. And I think there are more out there than what we realize. As far as, I think you said the Glimmer Man, what do I think the Glimmer Man is? Same thing. I think it's an ultra-terrestrial being that we have no idea what it is at this point. Could it be an extraterrestrial? Sure. Could it be something we just don't really fathom at this point? Could it also be interdimensional? Sure. It could be really anything. I mean, and they do ramp up, and they kind of come in waves. I never had any reports of these things a decade ago. And when I started working along with the guys over at Expanded Perspectives, they first brought it to my attention, and at that point, we started really looking into it. Ruptured Duck. Do you believe that trees can pull their roots out of the ground and walk? I have seen a few examples on video that seem to suggest that that does happen. Do I believe it? Maybe a bit. What causes it? I think I think it's an actual cause other than the tree itself literally walking. What that is, I couldn't tell you. Maybe there's some type of ultra-terrestrial as well that make their way here, stay for a while, and they have the ability to do that, especially where they come from. Dagnammit. In Provincia, Chile, a husband and wife observed a flying manta ray, Mothman, having leathery, segmented wings, and it was nesting in a church steeple. Its face resembled a dog-faced kangaroo. I have been reporting on these manta ray-shaped beings for a long time, not necessarily what we consider winged humanoids, but these beings come in different shapes and sizes. I've had probably about 20 to 25 reports over the years. I believe they're ultra-terrestrial beings. Many times they're translucent as well. I have had people tell me that they'll be out in the dark, and especially near water. And they'll look up in the sky where there's lots of stars, and they can literally see the stars through these beings. But they're shaped like manta rays. They undulate like a manta ray, but they're flying. They're not in the water. Anything else, folks? Sir Wolf, has there ever been any communication reports with the Glimmer Man? No. But like I stated in one of those reports, that clicking sound, like even shown in the movies, in the Predator movies, is indicative of these sightings. We've had winged humanoid sightings in the Chicago area where there was clicking sound. Is it some type of I don't know. Is it some type of system they use to gauge distance, or I don't know. I don't know what it is, but you do hear a lot about clicking. Boobly, Boobliettes, what's your scariest encounter have you experienced? Encounter, probably the winged humanoid sighting I had here in Pennsylvania. I had two very direct cryptid encounters. I had a Bigfoot encounter in 1981, and I had a winged humanoid encounter here in Pennsylvania about in 1988. Now, I've had encounters with entities, spirits, and such. That really never has scared me. I've been involved with cases that I've had some fear and some unfortunate things that had happened to people that kind of freaked me out a bit. But as far as an actual encounter with a cryptid or something like that, those were the only two. But the winged humanoid was the one that really stuck in my mind. Grandizer question: do you have a lumberjack stories on the infamous hide behinds? I have had a few people who do work in the woods, not necessarily lumberjacks, who have seen hide behinds, but mostly what they describe is probably a Bigfoot or Sasquatch or something to that effect. They're usually hairy. They're usually somewhat thin, but I do occasionally get a hide behind report. Hugh Janis. Have you ever heard of reports of a winged humanoid in southeast Kentucky in the Devil's Creek region of the Daniel Boone National Forest? I haven't had any winged humanoid sightings in Daniel Boone, but I've had Bigfoot reports, and I think I have at least one cryptid canine report. The area, and I don't know how far that is from Red Gorge, but Red Gorge, I have had a lot of sightings in Red Gorge. So take that for what it's worth. Okay, folks. Well, I want to thank you for coming in tonight and listening to me. And again, stay aware, stay safe. In 2 weeks, the 28th, we're going to have an Ask Lon episode for members. And I'm going to start having some Wednesday shows, maybe one a month or such. I've got some people who want to come in to do interviews. So occasionally I'll have some other people doing interviews. I saw something about somebody mentioning about Mac Maloney. I've tried to get Mac in. Every time I get in contact with him, he's got something going on. Maybe at some point I'll have him come on. So again, until next Friday night, stay aware, stay safe, and as always, keep looking into the unexplained, and have a great weekend and have a good night.